살고 싶으면 타요.
Bro, we were fine with it just being a dad and his daughter on a train. Informer Army, what is going on? It is I, the Caped Informer, back for a review of one of my most highly anticipated releases for this summer. Train to Busan presents Peninsula. Commonly mistaken as Train to Busan 2, the sequel, and sir, let me tell you, this is in no way a sequel to that. It is set within the same universe and 4 years after the events of that 2016 masterpiece. For those who did see the original Train to Busan, I'm sure you'd all agree that it didn't only receive praise for being a compelling horror drama, but also for the fact that it was able to breathe new air and revitalize the once dead and forgotten zombie horror genre. Let's be honest, American movies have shot that damn genre to death between shows like The Walking Dead, movies like World War Z, games like Resident Evil or The Last of Us. It's like we're zombied out. But no, South Korea came through in 2016 and said, we got this. Put a man and his daughter on a train, sprinkled in a zombie pandemic, and boom, magic happened within those 2 hours. We all expected that same magic in Peninsula, but did it deliver? Let's start from the beginning. But before that, to be informed on movies just like this one on a weekly, if not daily basis, please tap that subscribe button for me and join the army, fam. So, like I previously stated, this movie takes place 4 years after the events of the first film. South Korea has been abandoned and reduced to an apocalyptic wasteland. 4 Hong Kong refugees, including the main character, former Marine Captain Jung Suk, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who were lucky enough to escape the hellhole, are forced to relive the horror when assigned to a mission with the objective of retrieving a truck loaded with $20 million in US currency. So already we can see this movie diverting from the original, from being a desperate survival struggle drama to a get rich or die trying action spectacular, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if that's what you're looking for. But I feel like if you were a fan of Train to Busan, then this movie's direction was a bit of a letdown in this regard. Instead of zombies being the biggest threats that face the protagonist, it ended up being humans. Go figure. This happens to be a fairly common trope in most post-apocalyptic movies, especially the zombie ones. Once some time goes by, people eventually learn to adapt to the threat and their new way of life. This really kind of made the once terrifying monstrosities from the original pretty much feel harmless in a way. Which they weren't at all. The zombies are still as fast and vicious as they were in the first one, but Peninsula puts so much more of a focus on the now lawless inhabitants of the city. And you know, maybe that could have been a better, more successful route had they made a somewhat compelling villain in the bunch. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, as the villains really felt kind of flat to me. Their motivations were just hollow, based off greed and torment. Basic stuff. Luckily, the main protagonist made up for this shortcoming, which consisted of the main character who I spoke of earlier, Jung Suk, and 3 other survivors, of which were a mother and her 2 younger daughters. Now, it was these 2 amazing child actors that truly brought all the personality to this movie, and trust me, it needed a lot of it. It also brought an interesting opportunity to show how young kids were able to adapt and grow up in a dystopian world. Despite their harrowing circumstances, the 2 girls were not only extremely upbeat, but also content with the way things were, as long as they had each other. They were also insanely crafty and self-sufficient. Not only were they able to save themselves in sticky situations with the infected, but also save Jung Suk in a number of different circumstances.
내가 또 나서야 되나?
As far as the rest of the movie, you guys can expect a boatload of bullets and car chase scenes. This movie was in no lack of that kind of action, and in fact, it replaced a lot of where the horror and suspense needed to be. Well, I shouldn't say needed, but where you'd expect it to be. And don't get me wrong, a lot of these scenes were actually pretty good, especially a lot of the gunfight scenes. But towards the end, we're almost force-fed this endless car chase scene with way too much CGI. And supposedly, everyone in the apocalypse are expert race car drivers and drifters. Like, it was cute when they made the older daughter nice on the wheel, but we reached a point of diminishing returns with that. So, my final verdict, I must say it was a half decent action flick with some zombie stuff in it. If that's up your alley, then I say go for it. But under no circumstance go into this movie believing it's the definitive sequel to Train to Busan. It is not, and you will be disappointed. And technically, it's a bit unfair since it really isn't an actual sequel. I don't know how many of you guys are Resident Evil fans, the video game series, not the movies, but it kind of reminds me of what they did with that series. The first couple games were based on a strong survival horror thriller experience, but the more later games went to a more hardcore action genre that a lot of fans criticized. Speaking of which, this movie would make a crazy dope video game. Anyways, that's a whole other video. Guys, that's my time. Please tell me your thoughts on this movie below. Please like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in my next one. Peace!